Aruna and
Right. Yes, well, that's one of the things we want to discuss, how in Hinduism you really want to you want to get rid of the illusion. You want to get rid of the Maya so that you can go back to the spiritual world.
yes.
And that's what we want to discuss, that crucial difference. And of course, that's with Christ. Why did he go on the cross? Before that, it was almost identical to the story of Buddha. And then at the very end, he decides to become crucified. So that's the step that Buddha didn't take. So that's what you're talking about. How come Christ went to that other step? Do we have somebody else joining us? I think, let's see, there's My PC. Who's My PC? Somebody else is on with us. Hello? Anyway.
Oh, no. Well, the Gita talks about going back and reconnect to the spirit world, to where you came in. And to do that, we have to overcome our passions and our selfishness, desire, and all this stuff. Which means kind of, how do you do that? I mean, you could do it. It seems like you had to retreat from the world, more or less. Or else, time he tells what's his name, Arjuna?
Arjuna.
Says, do your duty. That means engage in this world, right? So to me, there seems to be a little contradiction there.
Well, it's the oh, My PC has left. I don't know who My PC is. It's supposed to be well, the person that I wanted you to meet is Marion Williams. He's a very unusual, interesting man, and I was very eager for you and him to meet.
Oh.
So and then here he is. Good. Hello, Marion.
Hello, can you hear me?
Good. I can hear you fine. Can you see us?
I can see you. I didn't think to hook up my Skype, but go ahead.
You have to click. All of those buttons have to turn green.
Okay, I don't have a camera on my PC.
Oh, okay. So anyway, it doesn't matter. We can hear you fine.
Good deal.
So I want you to meet Walter.
Walter, how are you, my friend?
And Walter,
I'm fine, Marion. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, but I intend to improve.
Okay, Walter, tell Marion a bit about you, your background, and what you're interested in, and then Marion do the same thing with Walter.
Well, my background, I come from Italy. I was born in Italy, and first time around 15 years of age, I immigrated here in New York. My father was working here in New York. Well, now I live in Michigan, but when you retire, I moved back to Michigan in '64. I went to school, high school, college year. I grew up a Catholic, and it's the only religion or spiritual connection I had at the time. It was more a cultural thing than a spiritual thing. But then, I went through life, work. I got married. I operated under the rahas, or what they call it in the Gita, passions and selfishness, desire. They got me all kinds of trouble. I ended up getting a divorce, and got married again. And but the divorce and closing down a company got me thinking and searching, and a friend of mine exposed me to Steiner because he was helping me out a little bit, and I started reading Steiner about spiritual science, and totally different stuff for me at the time, But now I'm in there, and I can't get out. and I don't want to get out. As a matter of fact. So in a way, you call I'm hooked. Is that you might call an addiction? But Steiner was the only person that I found that there was on both sides, a scientist in the material as well as the spiritual world. And he did investigations, and he knew the answers. You could give him things from experience, which either you got to be a fantastic liar or they're extremely clairvoyant. So I think it's the latter. And I seem to refer to most of his works whenever I have to search for things. So here I am. Me and Andrew met. I don't know. We met. You must have been the same mode there somehow when you started out. You must have gotten my email because I used to contribute to Steiner books.
Yes, that's how we met.
And then Andrew and I joined a few of these webinars, and that's where we are now.
Well, thank you, Walter. Marion, tell us about yourself now.
Well, I'm Heinz 57, mongrel, both naturally and spiritually. I've studied a little bit of everybody. Remember, the Hebrew camp was led by the cloud by day and the fire at night, and they'd fold the tent and move from place to place. Well, I kind of liken that to my journey, not really camping out too long in anybody's particular well. I love Steiner. I found him years ago, and I'm continuously drawn back and forth to him. It takes a while to digest some of his stuff, but recently I've really been enlightened by, especially his writing on Paul in the Gita, because I love the esoteric tradition of the Bible. And like you, I spent about 20 some odd years in alcohol. Must have been karma. You know, the Presbyterians believe in everything's predestinated, and old man was coming out of the Presbyterian church one day, and he slipped and fell down a flight of stairs, and the elders reached down and helped him up at the bottom, and he wiped his hands together and said, well, I'm glad that's over with. And that's kind of how I feel about my journey until I woke up in 1984, completely delivered supernaturally from alcohol, never looked back, and have changed spigots, you might say, and I've had an insatiable appetite for all things spiritual and all things esoteric. But my background is pretty well grounded in the Bible, not any one particular tradition, but looking for those hidden truths and uncovering those, and then trying to apply those, because they're worthless if we don't apply them. We're hearers, not doers only. To my life, where we can literally manifest. The Word can become flesh in our life. That's what I'm interested in. And building on that rock, whether I get insight from Steiner or from Blavatsky or Gurdjieff or Pensky, whoever it comes from. But it has to come ultimately from within ourselves. If we get too dependent on any of these guys, then we miss everything they're saying, which is we've got to get this from ourselves. And there's a time that we listen to them, but there's also a time that when we wake up and it's our time to turn back and teach what we're living. I think you can only really share what you're living.
Yes, I believe that's true. In this Western culture, you know, they preach that God is some person else, at least the way it was my friend, outside, you know, and you obey. This idea that God is inside of us, that we have to explore it ourselves and know thyself type of thing, is not preached in this Western culture at all. You know, God is totally separate from us. That's the impression I get from them. So
Yeah.
they read the Bible too, but they interpret it their way too. They interpret is an external. I always thought that God was, you know, like the Pope, sitting there at the top, you know, and everybody else below. Until I read Steiner, and then I found out, oh, these spiritual hierarchies and all this. and the idea that we can go and become initiated and know for ourselves. That's amazing. That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, that's why we're meeting today, particularly to discuss the Gita, and why is the Bhagavad Gita important to accomplish what you two are saying. I mean, why it's I was telling Walter this, the fellow who wrote this for me decided at the last moment when he was pretty well finished to not work with me anymore because he objected to my introducing Steiner concepts from Steiner or from Gurdjieff or from Blavatsky, whatever, that introduced concepts that came after the Bhagavad Gita was written or promulgated. He objected to it being, I was being too materialistic. But both Walter and Marion, you're talking about just that fact. How can we in the flesh become spiritualized?
Right.
And that's the most difficult thing in the world. That's why it's so difficult to promote Steiner and basically the indwelling Logos, the indwelling Christ. How do we promote that when people are against that? Traditional Christianity finds that blasphemous, just like the Hebrews found that blasphemous. That's why the priesthood of the Hebrews couldn't fathom that. How could God be in man? But that's what we're trying to promote.
Absolutely. And of course, in 1 Corinthians 15, which is interpreted as a rapture philosophy, which is not, it's a very spiritual chapter, it talks about every man in his own order. And that word order, if you look it up in simply the Strongs or the Thayers, means order or battalion, which would go with Blavatsky's teaching where you're on a ray or with a particular group incarnation, and that particular group incarnation is awakening in one after another in their order. But until they're awakened, we're talking two different worlds here. We're talking to people that are asleep, and they need that. Remember when the disciples gather around Christ, and he says, if I don't go away, the Holy Spirit cannot come. Cannot come. And they were literally holding his ankles, and that's what's happening today. In the exoteric, people that need Jesus, the carpenter's son, right? Mary's son and Joseph's son, the carpenter, they're going to hold his ankles and prevent the Holy Spirit from coming in his life. And he said, if I don't depart, the Holy Spirit cannot come, which he had his mission to do on the cross in Calvary. And I'm looking forward to learning more about that from the Golgotha, the great teachings of Steiner on Golgotha, the volume of teaching he has on that. I haven't studied near as much as I want to because of time. But the people that are outside, I think what we have to do is people that are awake somewhat, and of course our light, as great as it is just a little twinkle compared to the light that we yet have available to us. We've got to understand that we were asleep just a few years ago, however many years that was for each of us. And that's the biggest thing, is not to begin to judge others for where they're at. Because as you truly awaken, and love is the first fruit of the Spirit, and it precedes joy in Galatians 5, if you look at the fruit of the Spirit there. And I think that is the first gate when Christ said the road is narrow and the gate is straight, and there are few that find it. There's few that find it in every generation. And when we do find it, the first thing that we have to do is make sure that we don't judge the ones that haven't found it because it's not their time to find it yet. But it might very well be our purpose to go back with the light we have once that we have, or we're walking in enough love that we can share without condemnation and separation and be inclusive. Then we can help them awaken in their order. But like you and I had a conversation several weeks ago, Andrew, they're just some people are just not ready for this, and we can't force our light down anyone else's throat. We have to. We're going to be sent to people, and people are going to be sent to us, and those are the ones that we can disciple.
Well, you brought up a point, Marion, that I want to discuss today very thoroughly, karma and reincarnation, because that's the reason, what you said is the reason why this is so important to know about, our own prior lives, because that's the way we so quickly understand what you just said, Marion. That's the way we don't judge others. Once we realize that we have been there ourselves, whether it's in this lifetime or in prior lifetimes, we're not busy judging other people because we've been through that. So we know the sins that these people are going through, and it's us. So one of the things that I learned was that all of those 10 commandments, we've broken them all. So when you talk about addiction or drinking or sex addiction or whatever, we've all been through that. So that's the reason we don't judge others, because it's us.
Yep.
But the more people are ignorant, the more they judge. I learned that. So the more you know, the more you realize, like, you advance, you cannot judge. And because different people are different stages of evolution, of enlightenment. And that's where they need to be, I guess. And
well, another thing, too, we've got to take in consideration karma. Any teaching that doesn't consider karma, I mean, we might be trying to set somebody free that's still in prison, you might say, to their previous, because as you sow, that shall you reap. Whatsoever that shall you reap. Okay? And then it says in Ecclesiastes that a man that's in sin, he continues in sin, he looks up and he sees no punishment coming, so he puts his head down and continues as if there were going to be no reward for his. But that reward might come in a future incarnation. So when somebody is in the process of manifesting that karmic relationship, and I'm not so sure, mercy always cries out against judgment, so I'm not so sure that karmic relationship can't be mitigated in some way, and even by us. I've read, if you read Anna Bonus Kingsford, she's talking about, and others are talking about, taking on other people's karma is part of your service to the world if you're called to do that. That's part of your path. But if you're trying to pull somebody out of an addiction, an alcoholic or a drug addict, I've got a friend that's one of the sharpest guys you'd ever meet 30 years ago that's still on crack cocaine today, and I don't even know how he's still alive, but he went from alcohol to cocaine to got on crack, and I tried to help him for years. And when you first are awakened and delivered from addiction, it's easier for people to pull you back into it. It wasn't in my case because my deliverance was so supernatural. But typically a lot of people that have to rely on Alcoholics Anonymous and they're trying to help somebody else, it's a lot easier for them to get pulled back into that karmic cube or box than it is for them to try to pull somebody out if they're not fully prepared themselves. And A Course in Miracles says the world is full of unhealed healers. People that are not whole, they're going around trying to heal everybody else, and we've got to make sure that we love our neighbor as we love ourselves. First of all, like Gurdjieff says in Opensky, we got to work on ourselves. Otherwise, our neighbor's getting a raw deal, right?
Yes, and what you said about karma is very interesting because it's almost like well, you can see it in yourself. You've had a life that at a certain point, well, you talk about being supernaturally saved, Marion. But there's a certain, if you went to an astrologer, the astrologer would have told you that was the time that you would be freed.
Exactly.
So everybody has timing. Everybody has a certain time frame. And that's
right
why,
back to 1 Corinthians 15, what I said, every man in his own order.
Yes, and we can't interfere with that.
Yep.
So what we can do is...
Unless we trespass, that word trespass in the Lord's Prayer, or forgive us of our trespasses, that's when we go outside our own boundaries, our own metron, our own boundaries, or we go over into somebody else's boundaries and meddle in their maybe karmic relationship when we're not fully enlightened enough to understand or perceive or clairvoyant enough to see that this person is locked into this until their appointed time. Go ahead.
But there seems to be, though, a fine dividing line here, because I remember reading on one of Steiner's books that if you see somebody hurting or somebody going through very difficult times and you have a chance to help, and you could say, well, no, I'm not going to help. That's his karmic reaction, his karmic destiny. Let it be their way. Yeah, it talks about, in Steiner's writing, it talks about we should help within love, whatever we can help. So, I don't know.
That's a great point.
This is, it's a tough dividing line. I'm sure if somebody's suffering or something, if you can give a helping hand, but you got to do it in love.
Exactly.
I think that's the big question. Not out of selfishness, not out of other motives.
Exactly.
But
like you say, it is a fine line, and you have to discern whether you're led to help that. Now, I've read in some of the third world, not third world nations, but Eastern nations, where if there's an accident, people are laying bleeding, they just go right on by and say, that's their karma. That's an extreme.
That doesn't sit well with me.
Oh, me neither. Me neither. You stop and render aid. It might be their. Go ahead.
Yeah, that as well as these starving kids in developing countries, you feel like sending some kind of aid. What are you going to tell a kid, you're not going to help him? You got the means to help the guy, but says, no, that's your karma, I'm not going to help.
I think that's why we have the means, Walter. And once we realize that's why we are prospering to help other people and the animals and the planet itself, and that's part of the mercy crying out against their judgment, right? Is that we're exercising true compassion from a standpoint of wholeness, and even though we might realize somebody's in a karmic box right now, it doesn't mean that we can't offer aid and comfort to them as we're led to do that. And of course, in the case of the extreme example of the accident where people are lying bleeding, we're certainly not going to turn our back on those people.
Yes, but I think it has to be done out of love. That is the key. In love, there should be no other selfish motive involved.
That's the first gate, the first fruit of the Spirit. Absolutely.
But we're discussing a very important issue here what's the extent that we say let other people know what we know. It's natural to want to share the joy that we have from, say, discovering Steiner.
The book on how to know higher world says when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So if you push something on somebody, it might not be, if the person, I guess, starts asking and is searching, then it's time to share, I think. Sharing without the person being interested, doesn't seem like the way it needs to go, according to what I read, or even it's pushing your ideas on someone. Someone has to be ready to receive.
That's right. But I say that still it's our job to let it be known in a certain way that leaves people free, that people be exposed to what we know.
I think to our example, the way we live and all of that, people will come to know that, well, wait a minute, this guy, he seems to be more in peace, you know something that I don't know.
Let me tell you the flip side of the coin that you just mentioned, Walter. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When the teacher is ready, the student will appear.
Yes, that's very interesting.
Let me insert another influencer along my way. There's a gentleman named Joel Goldsmith that came out of Christian Science. He came out of it, and he was a businessman, a very successful salesman in the 20s or 30s or so. Got really sick one day with the flu, couldn't get over it, went to a Christian Science healer, and the guy laid hands on him, and anyway, it just changed his life. and started him, and he was treating, as they call it in Christian Science, for his business, and his business kept going downhill. Okay, so he was making good money. He was smoking cigarettes. He was out dancing and all the stuff. Nothing wrong with dancing, but this is the way he puts it in his story. So he's treating and praying for his business to prosper. His business is going downhill. All of a sudden, he feels called to go open a healing practice. Rented a little small office in a obscure office complex. Never put out a shingle. Never advertised. Now he's still famous around the world, and people are there's probably millions of people that follow him. He never advertised for students. He never advertised. People would just come to him. And his like I say, his ministry or outreach or however you want to describe it still exists today, and people are still listening to his teaching. So that's an example of when the teacher is prepared and ready, then the students are sent to him by the higher worlds. And those are the ones that we can truly help, because only the higher worlds. And let me say one more thing while I'm talking, and I'll let you guys talk. When I see the picture you have on the screen, Andrew, I studied a lot through I've never been a Presbyterian. I've never been anything except a spiritual traveler. But when I went through the Presbyterian Church, Reformed theology, looking at their eschatology, they have a good grasp on eschatology. And then I have an uncle-in-law who's a hardcore Presbyterian. He's got a good heart. He loves God through the Presbyterian philosophy of, God has spoken, it was written in the Bible, and he'll never speak again until he returns. And, of course, Calvin is their founder, right? So when I look at this corpse on the table, and especially with the Puritans around him, looks like they're doing an autopsy, I kid my uncle, who has a great sense of humor. I say, are you still worshiping at the coffin of Calvin, trying to get a little light from his extinguished candle? Because if we're not careful, we're worshiping at the coffin of Steiner or Calvin or John Wesley or whoever, and we're trying to get the light this dead person gave us instead of getting our own light, which is what they taught us to do. Now, it's necessary, I think, when we are drawn into a Steiner, a Blavatsky, whoever, that we get everything we're supposed to get there, but we don't camp around that when the camp has moved and the cloud has moved and everybody's marched on, and we're still trying to worship it's somebody's coffin. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yes, no, that's very true, and that's really one of the essential things that we're trying to promote, just that point, Marion, exactly that. Now, that painting that you're referring to, that's Rembrandt's Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Tulp. And the reason why I have that on the screen is it's talking about just what we're discussing. Now, each of those students is at a different level in his understanding. And the teacher with the hat, the only person with a hat, and it's a lesson in life. It's going from death, from the autopsy, to the initiate who is the teacher. And now you notice that with each of those faces, you see the face on the top is looking at us. That's the intellectual soul. That's the way we are in this age, looking at us with the paper in his hand. Do you see that, Marion?
Mm-hmm.
And then the others, the one that's looking directly at the exposed tendons, that's the real materialist. And he's just amazed by the matter of the picture, the basically what is the Maya, the illusion. He's fascinated, but that's being exposed. So that's at a lower level. But if you try and reach somebody at a different level, they will think you're crazy. If you're talking to the person or exposing the person to too many things, it's like throwing pearls to a swine. But what you see there is the different levels. Now, the person who at first, when I looked at the painting, I thought wasn't paying attention, is the only person with his whole ear exposed. See the person at the far left or the second from the far left. That's the only ear that's exposed, because that's a person listening to the conversation, the teaching. So that's at the highest level, somebody who's not speaking but listening.
They have ears.
So this is why I use that painting as my screensaver, because it really illustrates exactly what we're talking about.
It's like Christ's disciples also.
Yes.
They didn't understand. Only one or two potentially understood what he was saying.
And not even one or two. I would say just St. John's, just the beloved disciple was the only one who really understood. The others, imagine denying Christ. Imagine, that's what I think of all the time. These people who were exposed to Christ in the immediate way, and they were the most highly developed people, that even they couldn't understand the message.
Talking about the disciples?
Yes.
What'd you ask, Walter?
You're talking about the disciples?
Yes, that's what Marion mentioned. The same sort of thing where you have different levels of appreciating Christ. Imagine being exposed to Christ and having different levels of comprehending Him.
Yeah.
And what I find so interesting is that why would Judas have to point out Christ? I mean, after all, Jesus Christ had taught for 3 years publicly, so he was known throughout the area. So why would somebody have to point him out? And the reason for that is that they were all imbued with this I amness, with this logos, indwelling logos, which was so enormous. The light was so enormous. After all, these are indwelling sun. These are indwelling people who manifested the sunlight in them. So that's why when the soldiers came, they needed somebody who could point out which was the Christ. And that was the role of Judas. Now, also, I want to mention to you one other thing. In a prior life, Rembrandt, who painted this painting that Marion referred to, he was Jacob in a prior life. So look at what the transformation is in terms of reincarnation. Here he taught just through his paintings, not through speaking or preaching or the way Jacob ran things, or the way preachers or teachers are today. Just he did it through his great artistry, and that was his method of doing what we're trying to do. We're trying to spread the word. Now look at how Rembrandt did it. Not interfering with anybody's freedom, but just through art. Now, by the way, that's what I've tried to do through education. To set up a university, an invisible university, so we don't have this kind of problem of interfering with other people's freedom. Because that's the precious thing that has to be maintained. The freedom to discover these things for ourselves, but also at the same time to expose what we know to a greater audience.
Exactly.
So
before we get too far off of Judas, if I could interrupt 1 second before we leave Judas.
Yes.
Did you know there's a scripture in the Old Testament that predicts Judas's I can't remember it exactly, don't remember the location of it, but it says, the last part it says he would abandon his bishopric and another would be appointed. And it's specifically talking about Judas. And when Judas reincarnated, even in the New Testament in some translations, it said another had to be nominated for his bishopric, which is a ecclesiastical word for his office, right?
Yes.
But that was predicted, so there's reincarnation right there.
Yes.
And so he was carrying out, but it's interesting also that how Satan had to enter into Judas in order for him to fulfill the mission. So because he had been around Christ, and even though he was reincarnated for the sole purpose of betraying Christ and fulfilling this drama in time and space, third dimension, right? To fulfill this, Satan, who is a helper of Christ, by the way, had to enter into Judas Iscariot so that he would fulfill the mission, the Scripture says, because he could be easily swayed by his own emotions, and even though he was incarnated for that purpose, if he wasn't fully awake to that purpose, Satan had to be there to make sure that he was handed over. But go ahead.
Now, Steiner says that that later on Judas incarnates as Saint Augustine.
That would be punishment. That would be punishment enough for him.
Now, if you think about that, that's very, very interesting because
it is.
Because Saint Augustine was the beginning of a certain church-oriented Christianity. So it's almost
what oriented?
Church-oriented. That is,
okay.
That is instead of doing what we suggest that people do, that find it in ourselves, like what Marion was talking about and Walter was talking about, to discover the Christ in ourselves. St. Augustine gave up on that. And St. Augustine said, no, let's go by the people of the past. Let's go by the church leaders.
Fathers, they call them.
Fathers, yes. And let's just accept what they say as gospel true. And St. Augustine was the one that was adopted by the Catholic Church, and that's why we have the Catholic Church the way it is, instead of what we're suggesting doing, that discover the Christ in ourselves so we don't need a church.
Exactly. Now, Augustine was very enlightened in his earlier teachings, and then he I guess, renounced that and went to the more traditional line of thinking and philosophy of what you're saying.
Yes, yes. Very, very interesting.
That's why the church, see, the church uses this as a way of controlling people. They eliminated this Christ, this thing in us, God in us, when it's some kind of a council of 400 something. So they eliminated the spirit, and therefore you have to be subject to the rules because you cannot grow by yourself.
And you're talking about, Walter, you're talking about 869 A.D., where the Catholic Church made it a heresy to consider soul and spirit as separate.
Yes.
And that eliminates thinking and leaving it up to the Pope to do the theological thinking for us. Oh, here comes Joni. Joni was going to be late, but I'm glad she arrived now. Hello, Joni.
It's the worst crime of them all.
Isn't it interesting, though, the very word church, ecclesia, means called out.
Because that prevents you for searching for yourself.
Yes.
It makes you a slave of the dogmas, and you're no longer an independent person.
Yes.
Right.
And you have to follow the dogmas because, again, I think it's very materialistic in a lot of ways. They want control. They want your tithing or whatever. And only they know the correct interpretation.
Now let's welcome Joni. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. We can't see you. Do you have a...
Yeah, let me figure that out. Keep talking.
Okay, and then we want you to introduce yourselves to Walter and Marion.
Hi.
Hi, Joni.
Hi, I'm Joni from Ann Arbor. Glad to meet everybody. Ann Arbor, Michigan.
You're a neighbor.
Is it frosty up there?
I'm from Novi, Michigan.
Oops.
We're close.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Say that again. I'm sorry.
I said I'm from Novi, Michigan.
Right now? Right now?
Yes.
Yeah, we're very close.
Yes.
Now, Joni, I have this recorded, so I'll send you a recording so you'll be filled in on what you've missed.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to be with my father, but so go ahead. Thank you. Figure this out.
Well, let's get back to talking about the Bhagavad Gita, and in what ways is that different from what we're talking about? In what way is that great, and in what way is that deficient? Well, Marion, I'd like your take on the Bhagavad Gita.
Well, I haven't I'm probably not, I'm no authority on the Gita. I haven't, I've got a version with an interpretation that's just totally profound, and I meant to bring it to the computer and forgot it. Hello, Johnny. But I'm probably not the one to ask on that, so I'm going to defer to the other guest.
Now, how about you, Joni? Do you have any sort of thing to say about the Bhagavad Gita in terms of what my question was?
No, and partially because I didn't hear the question, so
Oh, okay.
I think I'm all hooked up now.
Your sound, Andrew, your voice kind of breaks up when you talk, so sometimes that's why it's hard to understand.
Okay, now that everybody's here, I'll get off. Okay, it should be better now. Is it better now?
There's still crackling.
Is it better now?
I hear crackling. 1, 2, 3, crackling.
Yeah.
Oh.
The other people come through clear, but you, Andrew, don't come through clear. But we still can follow you, but sometimes that's why she didn't quite get your question, because the voice breaks up.
That's what it is. Andrew, it's your voice that's crackling, but Walter, it was smooth. It was smooth. There wasn't any breakup.
Well, I'll try and be quiet. And Walter, see if you can explain some of the issues we've discussed about the Gita and what it means to us today, and why it's so great, but why it's missing something.
Oh boy, that's a tough question, Andrews. The Gita, no, the Raji, or the practice of those Indian people, is to move away from the physical and move back to the spiritual. That was the main thing. And the three gunas are the qualities of the phenomenal world that keeps us from rejoining the spirit world. Whereas today's approach in Western culture, we go to the physical world for knowledge. We study the physical world, the Big Bang Theory and all this evolution from nothing to something. So there's the biggest difference there that I see. But Andrew, those three gunas, one of them is a positive one. It talks about the sattva, the pure, luminous, free from sorrows, resulting in happiness and wisdom. That, I don't find it something that's holding people back from experiencing the spirit world, is it? That's what you get once you start experiencing the spirit world. Isn't it? How you see that?
You mean the
Sattva. The one that talks about the three gunas?
Yes.
That holds us back. And so Johnny, the Gita talks about we're going to go back and rejoin the spirit. So the three things, everything is an illusion, it's a distortion. We're ruled by passions, desires, and things that gets us far away from the spiritual world. And so today, the order on the Western world, this is no, and it's like a hocus pocus stuff that we don't know anything about it, therefore it's not that important. And that's, of course, we know that. But now, to get more involved, Andrew, here we're talking about that we had to achieve self-consciousness and all this evolution in order to be free and all that stuff. And again, now we got to try to go back to our own independent needs. Instead of being connected like before, we have to connect it independently. It's the only thing that makes sense. Why would we descend into materialism and separate ourselves from the spirit world so that we could say it self-consciousness and say I am and be independent of it. And that's the way I'm getting through this evolution of time and we're going through.
Now, if you can
make our way back, we have to make our way back, but from an independent state.
Now, I'll respond to your question, Walter, if you can hear me all right. Can you hear me all right?
Well, yeah, we can hear you.
what you're talking about, the three gunas, the first one you like. It's pure, luminous, and free from sorrow, but it binds us with attachment of happiness and wisdom. So you say that's so good, but
Is it bad? I thought it was good. I have a feeling it's good, isn't it?
it's again, it makes plain what you said also, that it binds us to the world as it is, and this is an illusion. The wisdom that we see in the world, and the other word they use, the wisdom and the happiness. Happiness. A lot of people you see, particularly on Facebook, you see a lot of people selling happiness. Now, is that really the end of what we were all about?
Oh, that's such a loaded question, isn't it?
Oh boy. Pure luminous, it sounds like...
Happiness is based on circumstance, where joy, in the Beatitudes, when Christ says, blessed, that Greek word is makarios, and if you study it in the Greek, it means a sense of well-being, including joy, that cannot be shaken by adverse circumstances. So it's a steadfastness that's evergreen, and it doesn't, like I was reading in the paper this morning, it doesn't rely on whether or not there's adversity or a blessing in your life at the time. The word makarios, or blessed, are the poor in spirit. Now, word poor is a whole other study. It carries that deeper inner fruits of the Spirit, which cannot be moved. Because there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes that I love. It says, in the day of your prosperity, rejoice, but in the day of your adversity, consider. God has made one over against the other, so man cannot find out God's pattern. God. And joy doesn't matter whether you're in prosperity or abundance or poverty. That time, this is what the
Marion,
world
that's
doesn't know.
excellent. That's an excellent explanation of why that's a guna, Walter. And that's also why it's important to know about reincarnation and karma. Because whatever you are experiencing in life is just a temporary experience.
When I read pure, it's like a virtue to me. I don't know. So I felt that there was something good. Pure, luminous light, you know. Yet it's not good from what you're saying. Things that hold us back.
What Marion is pointing out is just temporary. Happiness is a temporary condition, and
maybe the word pure should
well,
not be.
that would be interesting if we would look that up in these different translations that I have, because these are all translations. So maybe that word is not there in some of the different translations that we use.
So basically, the Gita, as I mentioned before, is trying to say that the material world is illusion and the spiritual world is the truth, and that we should go back to that and kind of withdraw. I get that's the impression, withdraw from the material world, and yet he tells the God Krishna tells Aruna, go out and do your duty, go out and fight.
That's why the Gita is such a remarkable work of art, and different levels, and ambiguous. But that's why it made such an impression on people, because it's not as if there's anything wrong with the Gita, but it's a question of realizing that was a certain state in consciousness and a certain state in the way civilization was then, and that what Christ did was, as I said to you before, Walter, he went the extra distance of becoming, going through crucifixion. So to overcome death itself. See, the Gita has nothing like that in there. How do you overcome death? And if it's an illusion, I mean, people who really say that materialism is an illusion, first of all, they're wrong. It's a necessary illusion. And death is the one thing that is actually real about this illusion. We all go through death, and there's a reason for that, and Christ overcame death. People, Christian people don't like to think of it. They like to think of the cross and not of the resurrection. But the resurrection is a state beyond what you find in the Gita.
Yeah, in the Gita you find that.
Yeah, but in the Gita you find that you were never born, you will never die. Your body dies. You're not your body.
Yes.
So, but now you're saying that death is a real.
Yes, that's very, very interesting that you bring that up, because that shows you how Christ is at a higher level than Krishna. Working together, but at a higher level, because Christ actually went through the crucifixion and the resurrection. And that, yeah, go ahead, Marion.
Christ told us to know how to discern the times or the seasons. And when I look back to this portrait on your desktop, you know, it's like the Gita there, and we're still trying to examine and get everything. We're trying to gnaw the meat off of those bones, and it was for that particular time and season in our evolution. And it's not that we can't go there and continuously be enlightened by that, but there's a greater light. Every new season, and we're in the Aquarian energy now, we have Aquarian energy, which is a higher level of understanding of some of these old texts. And I would imagine that we could even go back to the Gita and with Aquarian insights and draw higher, because there's 30, 60, and 100-fold teaching. Christ said, if you pay attention to the seeds that he sows and you give them thought and study, they'll produce 30, 60, and 100-fold in your life. So you can have a 30-fold understanding of something, and then later on, as you grow and give thought and study and meditation and ponder, you continue to ask and seek and knock on the Scripture, whether it's in the Gita or Vedas or the Holy Bible or whatever it is, it will reveal itself to the diligent seeker. He said he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. It says in Proverbs 25:2, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's the glory of kings to search it out. Okay? And the word matter, well, it says in the word to search a thing out. The word matter, when it says the glory of God to conceal a matter, the honor of kings to search it out, a matter, a thing. Both those words are 1697 in the Hebrew, and they are debar, which is his word. So when he conceals his word, and we continue to develop from a 30-fold understanding of revelation to a 60-fold revelation, the 60-fold swallows up. It doesn't discard. I used to throw out all of my 30-fold revelation. When I would get a deeper understanding of the word, I'd want to get rid of all my 30-fold revelation, and I didn't realize that it was part of the 60-fold revelation, and if I throw out 30 from 60 is 30, I'm back at 30. But revelation of a scripture that other people only understand in the 30-fold, or maybe the 30-fold is the outer court, holy place, holy of holies, and Moses' tabernacle. So the 30-fold revelation is understood in natural light, you see, by the natural man, and receive a 30-fold revelation. As we go into the holy place, which is lit by the seven spirits of God, we're going to get a higher, deeper revelation, but there's still a higher revelation yet in the Holy of Holies, which is 100-fold. And that's where the unity is, because there's only one item of furniture in that compartment. And so our understanding grows in different levels. And there's different levels in man, as Gurdjieff tells us. And that's, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting that you're bringing that up, because in today's Mass, you know, that's obviously the Lenten season, and 3 of the apostles, it was in Timothy or something, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but that 3 of the apostles were there with Jesus, and they had or saw Moses, one of the prophets, Ezekiel, or whatever, and then Jesus, and then once they stood up, only Jesus was there, and the priest was saying in his homily, you know, hey, first of all, Moses laid down the law, and then people didn't pay attention to that, so then they send in the prophets, and, you know, people weren't paying attention to that, so then transition, especially like in tarot cards, you know, change or whatever, the level of understanding that you're talking about, once we get to Jesus in history, in the unfolding of mankind's development and spirituality, that's where the first ideas or the first teachings of, you know, you're eternal, you go on and read the crucifixion. But for me, this why we meet together and why we study all of this, and based on what you were just saying, Marion, the next level, and maybe I'm not saying it in terms of, I have studied it, and it's fun to hear you talk about those foldings, but for me, in a simpler way, I'm wondering if this is going to be where we have a death transition, or
Oh, yeah.
You know,
That's what Christ taught.
You know,
In order to find life, which is where the light is, you must lose your life. And the word both those words are the same, or two different words. You've got to lose your 5590, which is a strong word for suke, which you've got to lose your life, translated, lose your suke, which is your psychic realm, or the realm of the little self, translated life. But one of them is 2222, which is Zoe, which is a God kind of life that we're all talking about, and the Gita is pointing to, and everything else is pointing to, in the Old Testament, the Vedas, and everything else. But this is Zoe life, 2222 in the Strong's Greek. The number for that, if you research that, he said, I came to give you Zoe, and Zoe more abundantly, right? But that's in John 10:10. And he says, the thief comes not but to steal, kill, and destroy. And everybody, if you ask him who the thief is, who do they tell you?
Well, man, what you're saying, Steiner uses the word soul and spirit. So that's why we have to lose our soul, because the soul is too attached to the body to gain the spirit. Yes.
There's a lower soul and a higher soul.
Yes.
And so that part of the lower soul that teachers teach that are attached to the soma, or the body, is what we have to lay down, because it has grown. It was necessary to get us to that point, just like a husk is necessary to protect certain plants or nuts or something, and the fruit is actually inside. But when it's not necessarily evil, it's necessary to bring the wheat to maturity. And so that's what we're laying down. We're laying down the chaff in order to get the fruit, or the wheat, or the ultimate goal out of that, which in this case would be life. The kind of life that we're talking about, the life, and until we awaken to it. Go ahead.
Yes. And by the way, that's another thing we should realize about the Gita. The Gita was way before this this period of going into matter so deeply. So that's why there are new things that had to come about, because we're so deeply immersed in matter. And so that's why we're all struggling to how to transform matter, how to do the reverse. We've been busy for the last hundreds of years to get deeply into matter, to spiritualize, to get so that matter seems like the reality. And now we have to work on transforming the matter into spiritual. Not to go back to the Garden of Eden, but to go to the New Jerusalem. And that's the difference. We're not going backwards, we're going forward, so we use all of our own life experiences, which are all myriad and individual. And then we come together, unified, because we have this universal, well, it's really the Christ in us. That's really the I am in us, the higher self in us, that in a certain way then is individual, but in another way is universal. So that's the universal religion. That's beyond any particular religion, but it's all based on experience, not on doctrine or dogma.
So glad to hear you say we're going forward and not trying to get back to Eden.
That's for sure.
Yes, for sure.
I think that's something we need to think about. You want to know how to go about and kind of regain our spiritual connection.
Yes. Now, when we come back this week, should we do it on Sunday or Saturday? We can get Bill Fox with us on Saturday. Should we?
I can do Saturday.
Okay, so let's leave 11 o'clock next Saturday.
Whoa, 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 whoa. I think it has to be 12. Is that a problem for you guys?
Mary, is that okay with you?
What time was it?
Noon.
Okay, so let's leave noon the next Saturday, and then we'll continue this discussion. Yes.
Oh, man, earlier you were talking about reading the Gita then, and when we were talking about the different gunas, you were talking about it looks like then we have to draw from the world's an illusion. Christ said, that's never borne witness with me, because Christ said if you put your light under a bushel, put your bushel under the bed, you're going to lose that light. The world needs your light. We're the light of the world. He said, he came for the world. So as we're redeemed, then we go and do our little part, whatever that is, whether it's 30, 60, or 100 fold at a time. If we're not all called, that's the thing that I think that we lose. Guys on the internet where you can make $1 million a month. Everybody is not called to make $1 million a month. Everybody's not called to teach or preach. Everybody was given a measure of faith, and that word measure in the Greek is metron. And over in Acts 17, it talks about God has set your boundaries, and even the length of your days to move and have our being. Just before that, if you read that, it's very insightful. But we all have a measure of faith or a metron or a purpose or a calling in this incarnation. And I think when we get outside of that, it's when we trespass. Forgive us for it. I was preordained to come here and do this purpose at this time, and anything else I do is a trespass outside of that box. Well, inside that box is my protection, it's my safety, it's my joy, lives. I'm not saying you don't stretch yourself, but you want to maximize your metron, but according to the measure of faith that you've been given. So I wanted to leave you with that.
Oh, very good.
And see what
a different version. I know it's getting late because now when you say everything is preordained, that precludes the freedom idea.
No, I thought we agreed to it. Pre-incarnation.
Right.
So basically, you know, you have a reincarnation, you have things that come your way, but you have a choice how to deal with it. If the text comes in.
Well, we
But
agreed to be.
everything is preordained, you don't have freedom.
But
No,
we
preordained.
we agreed to our gender, what our talents are. That was all preordained by us. That's a Steiner thing from way back.
All we do
We're
is
in that
define,
council.
you know, is
And we
karma.
participated in that council.
Karma presents the occasion. How you react to the occasion is what is.
There is choice. It's choice within that box he's talking about. I think.
Yeah, it's like an architect.
It could be a circle too, Johnny.
It's like an
Yeah, that's right.
it's like an architect.
Gun, or maybe a little 3D
But
hologram.
we're infinite, but we've chosen to be finite within these constrictions to incarnate councils of people who are wiser than us, right?
Right.
But this is also a way for us to work on
John
our
is an
problems
architect.
from
And you mentioned I
pre-incarnation.
like this. If you're an architect, you design a house, and then you move to it. Now you say that there's no freedom to design the house, but
Yep.
you move into it, and look at all the stuff you can do in the house. So that's the difference. The preordained part is the structure that you give yourself. Then there's plenty of freedom within the structure.
Everything.
Frank Lloyd Wright. It was Frank Lloyd Wright that said our limitations were our greatest inspiration. You know, so certain talents, certain bodies, certain times, certain whatever.
Yes.
And
that's
we
We'll
get
continue
to.
next week. We'll continue Saturday. This very enlightening
Not
discussion
happiness,
tonight.
or a USB.
I use a microphone.
Okay, if you have a USB,
Yeah, I'll use that next time.
yeah, that probably would be
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
I
because
think it makes it a lot
Okay.
easier.
I'll plug in that next time.
you're the only one, I hate to say it,
Okay.
that's breaking
Very
up.
good. Thanks very much.
We'll ponder why that is next week on the spiritual
There
level.
must be a greater message in that.
Yeah, we'll ponder that at
Very
a
good.
higher level.
Bye.
Back to you next week. God bless everybody. Goodbye. Stay in the light.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye,
Bye,
Andrew.
Joni. Thanks very much.
You might be able to fix that. You know, that's the only reason I was suggesting Google Hangouts is you might be able to.
I'm very interested in doing that. Let's just wait another few weeks.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You and I can practice with it and learn it until you and I are ready. You know, that's what I offer you is I have time, Andrew, and I can help you on different things like that. And you decide when you're comfortable and whatever. But these are things that my time that I can offer.
Okay,
you right
that's great, Joni. I appreciate that very much. The reason why I want to wait is that I've sent letters to these different companies.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm just telling you, you and I can have special time during the week that we can work on things. If, you know, I can be of service to you in as many ways as possible through the Facebook page, through Google Hangouts, anything. 'Cause, you know, you've got a foundation of all these wonderful PDFs and classes. I can be of service to you so that I'm valuable.
well, terrific. I appreciate that so much. You really have no idea how much I appreciate that. So I will take you up on that.
Well, and your PDFs, the books, the revisiting, is soul nourishment to me. I just want to tell you, when I was with my brother and I don't really understand what's this situation as I approach 60, and I'm so distant from the 3D people, family in my life, but I want to tell you, because you're one of the, out of the blue, my not legal sister-in-law, who must have been talking to my kids, who are 25, 27, 30, and she said to me something out of the blue like, you know, don't you regret Steiner education? And I mean, you know how important and hard that is to me. And I said, of course not. And she said, well, wasn't that more about you, and your kids don't like it or appreciate it? And I feel so much out on an island that I really want you to know how valuable and nourishing. And I even throughout, turn my attention to my brother, like to say, well, you should check out this classic insights, and and I never felt so alone after spending $300,000 to educate my children all the way through college or private schools, Steiner and Catholic schools, and I have a distant relationship with my children, but these people, I don't even know what caused being attacked for raising my children in Steiner, and her justification as a smoker, uneducated, whatever, was to throw fire on it by saying my kids didn't appreciate it. I'm just heartbroken. I couldn't wait to get home to tell so you need to hear what a lifeline you are for me, because I don't understand what's going on in the world, that I feel so disconnected and so unappreciative of my choices, when I thought I was all of what we're talking about is what matters. And I don't find that in my day-to-day life. And I just want you to know that's why you're a lifeline. That's why it's so important for me that we study this, that I connect with you, and I can be of service, because these discussions, this reading, all of this on earth, because I couldn't believe I got hit with that today. I thought of you. It was like, wow, I'm in church, we're studying all this stuff, I'm feeling joyful and happy, and out of the blue, this attacking, almost like, aren't you ashamed you are a heroin addict? It's like, are you kidding?
Well, that's what we go through, living in this world with all these people who are asleep, and we have to figure out how to handle ourselves as being light beings, and how to work at that. And you have an inkling of how to do it, and that's why we need each other. So I need you too. So let's figure out what we can do.
I appreciate it. Boy, you are crackling.
Very good.
You're going, that's what you sound like. It really is hard sometimes to hear it, so we got to figure that out. I hope that USB thing might be a good idea. There must be
Wait a
something.
second. Let me try it right now.
Okay, good. And there.
Here, can you hear me better now?
It's still crackling. Try again, talk again.
Turn off this.
It's a garbling. And I remember it from the other classes. But the other people, I could hear them.
Okay, now can you hear me now?
I could hear them.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
What did you do?
I
What did you do?
turned off the video, so you can hear me fine without any crackling now?
It's perfect.
Oh, okay, good. So
Now,
that's
let me
what we'll
ask
do.
you this.
Yes, go ahead.
Do you have an external video camera, or is it part of the computer?
No, an external video camera.
Maybe you need a new external camera. Maybe it's in the audio of the camera. Turn
Well,
it
then-
back on. Turn it back on and let's see if it still crackles.
Let's see.
Test.
They're both on now. They're both on now.
No, it's crackling.
It's
again.
crackling, so now I turn it off. And it's not crackling anymore.
Perfect,
Oh.
Andrew. It's the video.
Huh.
I'm going to ask: is that an old? Does it need a new downloaded driver? Is it a Logitech that you need a new one? I mean, they make pro ones for $70 on Amazon, and they make cheaper ones, new ones for $39. Maybe that's what it is.
Huh. Okay, I will work on that.
You sound perfect.
Oh.
You sound perfect right now.
Well, okay. I'll call you during the week, okay?
Okay. Yeah,
And-
you send me an email and give me some choices. But right this week, only Wednesday. I'm not here all day Wednesday. But most, you're Eastern, right? So we can do mornings, right? Correct?
Right.
Okay. Tuesdays I have webinars. Saturday I have a 10 to 12 webinar that I'd like to finish up this month, and Wednesday. So I would imagine Thursday and Friday this week, if it's good for you, 9-ish or something. Can you pick one of those days?
Let me just see, just a second. No, Thursday and Friday is no good this week.
Well, what about early afternoon? I'm just busy in the morning the other time.
No, I have my daughter from Japan coming to visit.
Okay, so what days are good for you? I can't do Wednesday and Tuesday morning, so that really pushes it to tomorrow. Or we can wait until the following week if you're busy.
Let's wait until the following week.
Okay.
But very good, Joni. Very nice to be with you, and I appreciate your help very, very much.
Well, I couldn't wait to get home because I was shocked. It was like, I felt like, whoa, I better go make sure I'm okay. I out of the blue, it's like attack. I haven't heard anybody attack Steiner, and to hear that my kids are saying negative things, it was scary,
Yes. Well, this is what it is to live in this world, and we have to be strong enough to not be bothered by that at all, but to recognize that that's the way the world is. Well, very good. I've got to go now, Joni.
All right,
I'll be
see
in
ya,
touch
see
with
ya.
you. Bye.
See ya.